What's up everybody? Welcome back to my channel. Thank you so much for clicking back onto this video. Today, as promised, we are gonna do a Q&A. Alright, so I put this out there on the gram a few weeks ago now. I haven't forgotten about you guys. Finally getting settled in Kelowna, as you can tell from the beautiful lighting and all this space. We are in Kelowna, you guys. Things are going pretty well so far. I am super excited to be here. We are gonna go over your guys' questions. We had some pretty good ones. I had to actually think about some of them. I got some notes just to make sure I stay on track with the questions because I tend to ramble just a little bit. Let's get right into it. Without further ado, question number 1 coming at you from MGM_motivation. Creeping her Instagram. Her name is Meg McCarthy. Hello, Meg. Thank you so much for your question today. Meg asks, who are your mentors? People you follow, podcasts you listen to? Awesome question. So I'm gonna differentiate this question based on 2 separate things that I'm working on personally in my life where I utilize mentors and podcasts. Firstly, it is being mentally fit and then physically fit. So I follow different people based on these 2 separate goals that I have. Being mentally fit, some of the top people that I follow in the industry when it comes to being a thought leader and a motivator. Obviously, number 1, yes, of course, the man himself, Mr. Gary Vaynerchuk. Also follow Brendan Burchard, Tony Robbins, Peter Vout, Grant Cardone, Lewis Howes. I just find that their content is super motivating. It helps keep me in check, especially if I'm feeling discouraged, impatient. I definitely do have to say that I think maybe the top 2 are Gary and Brendan. I have seen them both live. I've been to a keynote speak with Gary Vaynerchuk, and I've actually been to a, was it 4 days? I think it was 3 or 4 day seminar of one of Brendan Burchard's in San Diego. Is that where I went? Couple years ago now, and it was the best experience of my life to be surrounded by other people who are just simply trying to be better. That was a life-changing seminar. After that, my next one is definitely going to be a Tony Robbins seminar. I think all of them have podcasts. I just follow them on YouTube. I think Brendan has a new podcast out now called Brendan Show. Gary's podcast is the Gary V audio experience, I believe, and I can't remember the name of Tony Robbins. Lewis Howes has an amazing podcast called The School of Greatness. He interviews a bunch of other world-class leaders, and I really like listening to podcasts that do have interviews in them. That is because you get to expand your network, I guess, in a sense when it comes to who you look up to and who you want to learn from. So it's really cool in that regard. And another really good one, The Art of Charm. The Art of Charm is more of a guy's podcast, but you can definitely relate it to everyday life. The Art of Charm was a podcast that was started just as a way for guys to be able to hit on girls and be confident to hit on girls, but they talk about relationships and just being a good person in general. So I actually really enjoy that podcast, even though it's meant for guys. So that is in regards to being mentally fit. And now in regards to physical fitness and who I look up to and podcasts that I listen to in regards to that. Biggest people right now, I mean, it does vary as different content creators come up, but the biggest people who I'm following right now, Mike Picante. I really connect with Mike. He does do a lot of fitness stuff, but a lot of lifestyle stuff as well. He used to be an accountant. He dropped out and is doing fitness now, so you can understand how I can relate to him. He doesn't have his own podcast, but you can follow him on YouTube. Other people, I really like Danny Lennon. He has his own podcast called Sigma Nutrition. That one is awesome. Lyle McDonald, he puts out a lot of really good content. Any 3DMJers out there, 3DMJ is just killing it right now. That was actually who Kyle was coached by. They're a very science-based group of coaches, driven by science, nutrition, and of course, the main man himself who kind of started this whole journey for me is Dr. Lane Norton. And by listening to his podcast, he has one called Physique Science Radio. I'm not sure if him and Sohi are still doing it. They haven't done an episode for quite some time, but you can go back and listen to them. A couple of friends actually who live in Kelowna, Patrick Matt, Danny Gets Fit, Jeff Nippard, they're all out here in Kelowna and they're just doing amazing, and I actually have the opportunity to connect with them personally, face-to-face versus just through social media. Jeff does have his own podcast. It's called Ice Cream for PRs. He hasn't done an episode in quite some time as well, but you can definitely go back, check them out. They're really good, informative, fitness-related topics. Okay, question number 2. Mama Bear asks, her name is Amanda Hill. She asks, what exercises do you recommend for diastasis recti. For those who don't know, that is when you get abdominal separation, typically from pregnancy. So make sure that you discuss this with the physiotherapist first. I literally just noticed that my footage didn't record that entire discussion. So I'm gonna quickly discuss it right here. Basically, some of the exercises that I have heard that are okay to perform, it does vary. So firstly, you wanna make sure that you see your physiotherapist because everybody is different, and depending on your situation, exercises are gonna vary depending on what your needs are. So some of the things that you can do that do typically tend to help it, this isn't based on research or anything like that. This is just based on general principles and just based on my professional judgment. Glute bridges, frog pumps, vacuums, and even some crunches. I have heard mixed things about doing oblique twists, that you can do them, that you can't do them. I'm kind of leaning towards not doing them, so definitely make sure that you take that with a grain of salt. Consult with your physiotherapist first. All right, question number 3, synergy performance. What's up, buddy? This is Joel. He asks, in all your years in fitness, what's the best advice you've received and who gave it to you? And what was the worst advice you've received? No need to reveal that one if you don't want to throw that person under the bus. That is such a good question. Okay, it was an indirect piece of advice that was given to me that really was a game changer for me. That was to focus on being consistently good versus occasionally perfect. And this was given by Lane Norton. I think he said it in one of his episodes of Physique Science Radio, and it just stuck with me. It just completely shifted my mindset into letting go of the perfection, because 1, perfection doesn't exist, and 2, if you do have a perfect day, you cannot do that every single day. So for example, if you are within your macros by 20 grams every single day, is that perfect? Fuck no. Is that good? Yeah, that's pretty good. You want to be consistently good at that versus being occasionally perfect. So where you hit your macros fucking perfectly, 1 gram difference 3 days a week. But another one that I took away from him was to question everything. Before I kind of discovered flexible dieting, I was easily convinced in everything that was being told to me through social media, through my old bro coaches, and even through TV and stuff like that. I used to watch Dr. Oz and the doctors, and I was easily convinced that what they were saying was, oh shit, okay, it must be true because you're a coach, because you're a doctor, because you've competed in bodybuilding before. You must know what you're doing. Worst piece of advice. Ooh, where do I start? Worst piece of advice was, I was once told that if you want to dry yourself out for a bodybuilding show, because if you look at a bunch of bodybuilders, they look pretty dry. If you want to attain this look, if you want to dry yourself out, you have to eat chicken, because chicken is dry and that will dry you out. Sure, even just saying it out loud, it sounds ridiculous, right? Jessica asks, what's your favorite music to listen to while you're working out? Ooh, I have definitely had my music on repeat for the last year. Biggest artist that I'm listening to as of late during my workout is Rob Bailey, The Hustle Standard, Basanji, Rollin', Blink-182, and Eminem. I think that's it. But something new that I have been doing during my workouts, not everyone, but a good majority of them, is actually listening to a podcast. It distracted me even more from the people in the gym. You know how if you're resting during a set and you're looking at your phone all awkwardly like this, and you're just listening to your music but you're not really listening to your music, and you're just rushing through your rest period to get to the next set. Well, I found that by listening to a podcast when I'm resting, because I'm actually listening. All right, question number 5. What made you decide to do flexible dieting and not the typical bodybuilding diet? I think the only reason why I landed on flexible dieting is because I have done the bro diet before. This was before I was a coach. This was before I was on the gram, doing YouTube, and putting myself out there to you guys. I remember when was it? It was the summer of 2014, and Kyle hired a coach to get ready for the Kelowna Classic in 2015. I was writing the UFE to become a chartered accountant, and I wasn't ready to take on that lifestyle change yet, even though I was going to the gym and just eating what I could really wasn't paying attention to my nutrition all that much because I was still kind of a student, and you know how that goes. But once I was done in September of 2014, I hired the same coach and got started. Was instantly put on a meal plan, training program to get ready for the same show that Kyle was doing. So basically, Kyle and I were both on the same plan. We were eating the same foods day in and day out. It was a struggle. Meal number one, we would have either oatmeal or rice meal with just a little bit of raisins and maple syrup. And then there would be 3 meals, I think, subsequent to that for chicken breast with asparagus and broccoli. I did the whole bro diet thing, and it wasn't for me. And the one thing that sticks out in my head as to why it wasn't for me was the week after I was done my CA exam, Kyle and I went to Whistler to celebrate. I was finally done school and I didn't have to do school anymore ever again, so we went to Whistler to celebrate, and we both started this new plan. Well, we were told that we need to eat and stick to the plan, and we didn't have a show until May next year, so September to May, and we had to eat the same foods. So Kyle and I literally brought a cooler to Whistler with us, full of our breakfast, our lunch, and our dinner, and that's all we ate. Overall, that completely ruined the trip. I was so instantly stressed out over food, and I just started this new plan. So that should have been a red flag right there, but I kept going because this was at a point where I just kind of listened to people. I didn't take a step back and question everything. I just said to myself, well, you know what? Our coach looks shredded. They must know what they're doing. And I didn't question anything. I just did what they told me to do. Later on, after a few months went by, Kyle told me about Dr. Lang Norton 3 years before that. So in like 2011, 2012, Kyle told me about him. It was finally at this point that I decided to check him out. So I Googled him, watched every single one of his YouTube videos after we came back from our trip. I probably watched all his videos 2 or 3 times, learning, try to understand, him questioning my beliefs. It was at that point where I was like, I need to give this a try. So that is basically why I decided to do flexible dieting versus the bro dieting. And there's nothing wrong with the bro diet. Totally works. It wasn't for me, but I wouldn't have known that unless I tried both. So if you're kind of struggling as to which one to do, fuck it, just try both. I had to go through that though to decide which one was for me. Last question, you guys. How to deal with haters. Dealing with haters, the realization that most people need to have is if you're gonna put yourself out there, people are gonna hate you. It's how it is. People don't like it. They don't like that you're stepping things up, doing things better than them. So the best way to deal with it, I think, is to, use it as fuel. Seriously, use it as fuel to be better. If somebody dislikes your video, fucking go put out an even better quality video the next day. If somebody doesn't like what you're saying online or whatever it is that people fucking hate about, use it as fuel to continue to grow, put better content out there, and remember why you're doing what you're doing. My whole reason for starting a YouTube channel is to help people. But by me understanding that, it doesn't matter if somebody doesn't like that. Because at the end of the day, people aren't going to always agree with me. People are going to take it to the grave that eating dried chicken is going to dry out your skin. It's not my goal to please those people. My goal is to help the people who truly want to be helped. So when you're dealing with haters, you got to ignore them and remember that there's more people rooting for you than the people who are not. We give too much credit to people who are hating on us, and we completely discredit the people who are supporting us. Well, on that note, that's all I got. Thank you guys so much for all your wicked questions. That was a lot of fun to answer. I hope my answers did your questions justice. Thanks you guys so much for watching. Make sure you like, you comment, and subscribe, guys. See you in the next one.